Start
This
the recording.
conference will now be recorded.
Sure.
I was just checking the chat, the people list who came in. And we do have a quorum.
Okay. Thank you all for getting on the JTC meeting today. Again, my name is Dick Kilhart. For those of you that don't know me, I'm from the town of Athol, and we'll move forward to public comments. Are there any comments from the group or comments that someone might want to bring forward at this time? Seeing
I'll
and
just mention, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I don't mean to
All right,
interrupt.
no, you're good.
We're going to use the people signing in as the attendance list. So if your name's not up there, you want to add something to it, just make sure that you appear in our list, and we'll use that for the attendance listing.
Okay, perfect. If there are no other comments, we'll move to item number 3, which is the approval of the February 8th, 2023 minutes. And those were submitted to all of us prior to today's meeting. So I'll entertain a motion to accept.
Motion to accept.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Are there any that are opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that motion to pass an approval of those minutes from February 8th is recognized. Item number 4, the 2024 Unified Planning Work Program. Sherry, you want to take that today?
That's me. So on the screen is one of the handouts, and that was the memo that was sent out back on February 2nd, where we solicited for projects for the upcoming Unified Planning Work Program for the 2024 project program year. So from that memo, we had received 3 requests. Let's see, we have one from Townsend, which was a corridor study request along Route 119 in the area of the North Middlesex High School. We had Groton submitted a walkability update, which is kind of more of a trail connectivity, multimodal connectivity type of project. And then the North County Land Trust requested some trail mapping and ground truthing for their trail systems on all their properties. We have 3 projects to consider. We're still kind of hashing out the full scope of each project and trying to determine if which ones will get funded and which ones maybe potentially waiting till next year, or could be a potential other funding sources such as district local technical assistance might be another option for some of them. But we do have our equity section of our report completed. So at the next MJTC meeting, we can present that to you so you can see which communities have the more populated special interest or populations, as well as the geographical equity, where we have the majority of our projects that we've done over the past couple of years. So we can make sure that we spread the love a little bit throughout our region. And we don't want to just focus on a handful of our communities when we have 22 communities in total. So we want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to get some projects in the UPW. So the next handout that we have is on the budget, or the funding, I should say the planning funding. So this one is our updated one. So I know that you may have received a more of a outdated budget that came out previously, but as of March 2nd, we received this new funding budget here. And we just want to, I don't know if Brian, if you can zoom in a little bit to the second to last column a little bit there, because that's where we're primarily focusing. So you can see that in the second to last column that's in blue, that row is for our region, the Montachusett region. So for FY24 funding, our total funding would be $944,066. which is an increase of just over $17,000 from last year. And that is pretty standard for all the regions. And our funding has increased since the bipartisan infrastructure bill came into being. So we are trying to make sure that all of those criteria that are mentioned in that bill that are included in the UPWP, whether it's certain types of projects that they're asking for or certain data collection points that they're looking for. We just have to make sure all of that is incorporated. And I know that I think we did include the narrative in the handouts that did explain what types of, there it is, perfect, the guidance that we got from MassDOT that kind of goes through about what types of tasks they're looking for and how to put those tasks together and things like that. So every year we get guidance from MassDOT and Federal Highway that explains a little bit about what they're looking for in our UPWP document. So we're reviewing that still and making sure that everything is incorporated. So all the tasks that were requested also, we want to make sure that they meet these criteria listed. And we want to focus more heavily on the ones that are listed in this document. Did I miss anything, Brad?
No, I think that's it. Going back to the budget, I think one of the big changes too, why we got this new updated funding was FTA finalized the what they call Section 5808 funds that they give to the 5303 funds that they give us for transit planning purposes, and that's included in the entire 944,000. So the initial page you got was based upon the assumed level of funding, and then the final numbers came into Mass DOT and they revised these figures you see here. And this is also available in the OneDrive folder for this meeting. So if you want to see the updated information, it's there for you. And this whole spreadsheet that you see is just how Mass DOT apportions the planning money to the various RPAs in the state.
So for the April meeting, I will hope to have the equity analysis to present, and then as well as the proposed projects that we hope to select for the requests that came in, and some of the write-ups that go along with each task for those. And we could also share our drafted, I guess it would be like a outline or like table of contents, if you will, for all the tasks that will be in our upcoming year too.
Yeah, and our anticipated budget for those tasks also. Excuse me. As Sherry mentioned, the guidance has some certain requirements in it that we got to get further information on to make sure we're meeting those requirements. So that's why we don't have a definitive answer on some of the tasks at this point in time.
Are there any questions for Sherry or Brad? No? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move to item number 5, which is the 2024 through 2028 TIP program. And I'm assuming, Brian, you taking this, or Brad,
Yep.
you taking this one?
Brian's
Brian?
Yep, I could take this. The first handout we have is what you see on your screen here is an updated version of something we went over at last month's meeting. This is the total list of target projects we're considering for the target section of the TIP. The only difference between this handout here and last month's is our 2 new projects that have come on board since last year: Winchendon intersection improvements at Blair Square and Sterling intersection improvements, related work at 140 and 62, have been scored. So this sheet also counts as a sort of a score tracker. We score the projects. The Winchendon project got a score of 33, and the Sterling project of 30. So both scored pretty well in compared to some of the other projects. We also included our evaluation criteria scoring sheet in the handouts as well. If anyone's interested in seeing exactly how these scores correlate to the master sheet that we just looked at. We're also always willing to answer any questions or sit down with anyone who's curious about how we look at these projects, or if they have any information on a project in their community that could be helpful to this as well. So we're always rescoring these projects as new information comes on. So this is sort of just like a master list of all these target projects we're considering. So the main discussion on the tip today is what we need to do. It's March. We need to determine what direction we're going to go with our target project scenarios. So we're going to consider a few different scenarios today, and I'll go over each one in detail. And what we're looking for is a recommendation from the group as to what direction to go to, and the MPO will advise us to continue that and develop a draft tip for review in April. So again, these are just the target projects. This is where the MPO has discretion. There's also a statewide program of projects that's put together by Mass DOT, and also transit projects as well, which we'll have in next month's meeting. So as I mentioned last month, one of the main, or I should say the main issue this year is some design delays in our federal fiscal year 2024 project in Leominster, which is Route 12, project 604499. It has been suggested by Mass DOT to consider moving this back at least 1 year to federal fiscal year 25 to 26, which will have some large implications on the rest of our listing. So in the scenarios, we have to consider this going forward. Unfortunately, the case is that we currently don't have any other projects ready to go in 2024. So essentially, we move this Leominster project back, we would leave these funds unspent and they'd revert back to the statewide funding. So we'd miss out on the target funds for 2024 as of now. And I'll also mention that we are actively seeking projects to fund in 2024 that are eligible as well. So it's a constantly developing type of thing. So I'll go over some different scenarios that we came up with, and I just have to figure out how to share, because these scenarios weren't in your handouts, by the way, because they're still sort of being developed when the handouts went out. Let me just share my other screen here. Okay, so what you see here is scenario 1 for discussion. And below the headline of scenario 1, you can see a description of what the scenario does. In this case, scenario 1, we have no movement with this Leominster Route 12 project in 2024. In this scenario, we're going to assume that the design progresses, and specifically the issue here is right away, and that'll be ready to go for federal fiscal year 2024. This allows us to maintain our current order and add 3 new projects from the appendix to federal fiscal year 2028. There's some background noise as well, so if you could try to mute if you're not the speaker. So those projects that we're moving forward in this scenario would be Fitchburg reconstruction of John Fitch Highway, Sterling intersection improvements at 140 and 62, and Winchendon resurfacing and related work on Maple Street, which is Route 202, into 2028. And we considered a number of variables when deciding which projects to move forward. Project readiness always being the main one. It was determined that these projects would be likely ready to go by at least 2028. And also fiscal constraints. So we fit the most amount of projects we could. Also, we looked at sort of the geographic equity of the whole thing. We included funding for 3 different towns in this scenario in this new federal fiscal year. So again, this is scenario 1, no movement for Leominster, maintain current order. We're able to move 3 new projects into 2028 to the appendix.
Brian, sorry to interrupt. You have a couple of questions. One in the chat from Ashburn. I'm asking what would it take for them to have Ashburnham ready for 2024? And I believe there was a raised hand too.
So for
Brian Croto, Town of Winchendon.
Okay, and I can go over specific projects as we go along here. In Ashburnham's case, there's actually concern that it might not make 2025. So, and there's some progress being made. On that, so it likely won't be ready for 2024. I don't know the specifics. I know that it still needs to go through town meeting approval. There's a number of different issues with typically right away and stuff like that. So that's it would be great if it was available for 2024 because we seemingly might need to move Leominster back, but it's suggested that it stays in 2025 for now. And maybe I can take questions at the end because I have a couple different scenarios that I'll go over.
Hey, Brian,
Yes.
the Winchendon paving Vine Street to Glen Allen was already completed by the state. You can take that right out of your radar.
Is this on the? Okay. Yep. What?
MassDOT did that two years ago.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. Yeah. I know there's a number of projects that have stayed on this list and they shouldn't have. So I'll make note of that. And that's the Winchendon. Which project would that be again?
That's the resurfacing and related work on Maple Street from Vine to Glen Allen. That's all complete.
Okay, great. So we can take that out of the scenario, which frees up roughly $2 million in 2028. I'll make note of that and make sure that's off the list. Okay, moving forward to scenario 2. And can everyone see scenario 2?
Yes.
Okay. So scenario 2, in this scenario, we move Leominster back. This leaves us with no projects in federal fiscal year 2024 for now. And that could change if something else pops up or ends up being ready in time. We're always looking for that. Ideally, we move projects forward when other projects have to move behind, but this just isn't the case right now. In this scenario, it would involve a number of other movements as well. We'd move every project on our current list back 1 year, except in this case, Harvard resurfacing box widening on Air Road. This was because obviously the Leominster project being a large project moving back, it pushes everything else back. Nothing takes its place, so nothing gets off the list on an out year. So Ashburnham Route 101 resurfacing and related work would be pushed back to 27. Templeton Route 68 would be pushed back to 2027. Excuse me, Ashburnham would move from 25 to 26. Clinton reconstruction of Sterling Street would move from 27 to 28. And Athol intersection improvements at Route 2A would move from 27 to 28. This would allow us to add 2 new projects in this 2028 version. That would be Winchendon intersection improvements at Blair Square and Sterling intersection improvements at 140 and 62. So the result of moving that Leominster project back would push the majority of projects back and only allow us to fund 2 new additional projects. Scenario 3, again, the scenario assumes that Leominster Route 12 will make it and it'll be ready for federal fiscal year 2024. The major difference here is that currently this project is listed over 2 years. It's what's called advanced constructed. Originally it was on this list. The cost was over our target allotment. So we had to fund it over 2 construction seasons. There's other aspects of that resulted in that as well. But in this scenario, we actually do have all the target funds available in federal fiscal year 24 to fund the whole thing if it is ready, which frees up a significant amount of space in the out years. In this case, in 2025, leaves us with a balance of $4.4 million, which when we update this list next year would allow us to seek to move projects forward from lower down on the list. The rest of the projects stay the same, and just like scenario one, here we are showing 3 appendix projects moving up into 2028, and obviously this winching project should be off the table, and we'll make that change going forward as well. So again, what we're looking for from the JTC is a recommendation to the MPO on what type of scenario to pursue. And we do have sort of a preferred one as a staff. And we've been in talk with Mass DOT District 3 about the Leominster Route 12 project. And since we do not have anything else ready to go in 2024, we feel that it's probably smart to hold out hope that Leominster will be ready for 2024 and not move it back prematurely. If for some reason it's not ready to go in 2024, which is a very possible situation that we're in, we can always amend it back at a later date. But if we move it back prematurely, that's basically leaving the money from 2024 on the table. So I can answer any questions about specific projects or discuss any of these scenarios or any variation that people may have on these scenarios.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns for Brian?
Brian,
You can help answer.
Brian, it's Brian from Winchendon. If we get our ducks in a row and get our intersection done with a small value and Leominster does go this year, is there a possible, because of the value, we could slide in under 2025?
Which project is this?
The Blair Square intersection in Winchendon?
Oh, okay. Yep. Looking at the target funds, and so we'd be looking at scenario 3 in this instance. There's about 4.4 remaining in 2025. If it's ready, absolutely. The only issue.
We just got our 25%, so we're cruising along on it.
Okay. Yeah, and it looks like it would fit too. So, and this is this list will be different next year. We come back and update it. The most important year is obviously 2024. We come back around this time next year and we update starting with 25 going forward. So a number of things always change. So that's certainly something we'd keep on the radar. And we did look at moving that particular project from the appendix. We know there's some movement on it, and we've looked at some of the plans and things like that. But for now, it's not 25% yet. So we haven't moved it yet. But certainly it would be nice if there's a hole to fill it in with something.
Thank you.
I'd like to throw in, this goes for all the communities and the projects they have, is that staying on the design process with your consultant, making sure it's moving forward at a consistent pace, it's being sent to MassDOT, the district offices for their review. You're getting feedback from them, and the comments that they get from MassDOT are being addressed and refined so that goes from 25% to 50% to 75% to 100%. That ends up being one of the major driving factors in programming these projects, is where do they stand in design process. Obviously, if they're closer to 100%, we're looking at the up years, the 2024s, the 2025 for programming. If they're just started, they've just been approved, they're going to have a little ways to go before they're at a point where we can seriously consider where they fit in the funding program. So going back to Ashburnham and their project, make sure the design consultant is staying on top of it. Make sure they're contacting Mass DOT. They're getting the information they need. That ends up being a holdup for a lot of projects, is that the design just seems to stall. Mass DOT is waiting for something. The consultant may think they've already sent it in. So they've got to have that communication to get that project moving forward. And that helps us in the programming process. As Brian said, if we move out Leominster, we don't have a project that we're confident was going to be at 100% design to go in 2024. And we say 2024, that's from the federal fiscal year, so it runs from October 1st of 2023 to September 30th of 2024. So there has to be, the design's got to be ready and everything, all the ducks have to be in order, and Mass DOT has to be ready to advertise sometime in that time frame for 2024. And I see we have two hands up, one from Rebecca and then one from Tim. So Rebecca?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So that's what I was wondering. I haven't been working on the tip, but I'll go find out who is and we'll see if we can get everything moving forward so that we can be ready in 2024.
Yeah,
Yeah.
typically it's one contact in the town who's been working on the process. So whoever
Is it Rosemary?
it could be a selectman, it could be the your DPW director, whoever has that was put in
Okay.
charge of follow up and so forth. But
And
That
Rebecca, we
sounds
have,
fantastic.
sorry, and specific to the Ashburnham project on 101, that's very much on our radar. We've gotten updates in the last few weeks, and we're always looking to move things forward. And this hopefully will be a candidate if Leominster isn't ready to go, but we just don't know. And one thing that we learn every year when we deal with issues like this Leominster issue with it possibly moving back, it causes a ripple effect. So the most important thing is design readiness, and certainly we're keeping in tune with what's going on with the design and the consultant and how complicated it is and if there's any issues, and DOT has kept us updated on that as well.
and also one thing, I lost my train of thought. As it keeps moving forward, at some point the town's going to be responsible for working with the right-of-way office of Mass DOT. So, and then that's where there's a lot of work that the town has to do regarding right-of-way easements and negotiation and so forth. But that gets further along in design. So if there are any questions, let us know. We can put you in touch with appropriate people at MassDOT, which would be District 3. Sarah Bradbury is one of our contacts down there. So
Yeah.
we can receive answers, get you some answers.
Wow, that-
I'm sorry, what was that?
That was someone in the background. I was going to comment after you were done that
Sure.
that I would love to make sure that we're moving forward, and so I will. You mentioned that something needs to go to the town meeting, and so I'll talk with you offline about what that is, and we just opened our warrant, so it would be nice if we could get that on this next town meeting.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what that aspect is. It might have something to do with a local match or a local agreement needing to be done or passed. But feel free to contact us, and we can also arrange to talk MassDOT District 3 so that everybody's on the same page.
And Rebecca, I think the best contact would be for that is because we don't know as much as Mass DOT or certainly a consultant, but they should be in tune on that. So if plans need to be made, and that's my understanding, is that there is some component that needs to go to town meeting in that particular case. I would contact your consultant and District 3 as well.
Thank you.
Tim, your question?
Yeah, just looking at the three scenarios that Brian's put up here, I think the scenario 3 there obviously looks like the best to me because you're putting everything in 24, using up that full allotment there, and then that frees up some money in 25 in case somebody else can slide in there with that $4.4 million offer there. So that obviously puts other towns that have a project that might fit in there, gives them some incentive to move their projects forward to get it where they need to be. And obviously, scenario number 2, I just think that one there really hurts everybody in the tip by trying to move everybody around and pushing everybody out. When Leominster's already been pushed out, this project's already been pushed out a couple of times in the 10 years I've been part of the MPO. So I like scenario 3. I would think a plug for scenario 3 is the one that we could recommend if anybody else agreed with that or had comments.
I will say also that, by leaving it in 2024, the Leominster project gives us the flexibility, but also it puts the pressure on Mass DOT to see if they can actually address those right-of-way issues and get them resolved quicker. Theoretically, they'll have until September 30th of 2024 to actually advertise the project. So I think the best we should do is, keep something in 2024, not leave a big hole there at this time.
So are we looking to take a vote today, Brad? that what you-
Doesn't have to be a formal vote. We'll look at a recommendation to the MPO, which you think is best. The recommendations could be for one of the particular scenarios. Now, it can also be sort of like maintain funding in 2024 with the Route 12 project.
Is the group so inclined to make a recommendation? I mean, I know we've heard one from Tim. Are there others out there that people feel we should have more debate or more conversation on? So should we take a formal vote, Brad, so that we can submit that for the MPO next week? Or not
How about-
necessarily?
Well, we can just do a consensus on the recommendation.
Okay.
We'll go with Tim's recommendation first. If everyone thinks scenario 3 is the preferred alternative that should be recommended to the MPO next week, how about instead of saying everyone say aye, if anyone's opposed to that, just say so.
Is anybody opposed to scenario 3 that Brad had presented?
Could you scroll the screen down to see the later years just one more time?
Yeah, and this scenario leaves all the other projects in place, except obviously our new year that we're adding is 2028. In this case, it would be Fitchburg and Sterling. The Winchendon project would be taken off the list. So we'll have about a balance of over $2 million in 2028, and more importantly, in 2025, we'll have a large buffer of $4.4 million in this scenario.
This is Nick Erickson from City of Fitchburg here. I'm happy to see Fitchburg on the 2028 year, and I've been talking with their consultants in Mass DOT, and I think we're on track to have that project ready to go as early as late 25 or early 26. So 28 is absolutely doable on our end.
That's good to hear, Nick. We've been getting updates on the Fitchburg projects as well, so we're confident certainly in 2028. But if something frees up in an earlier year, it would be great to have a project to move forward. We could have used it this year, but
I know. I just asked them the question if it would be ready to go by 24, and the right of way is just going to take a little bit too long. We can't make it happen, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. And so I'll present the same information to the MPO. Hopefully nothing significant changes between then and now, unless it's good news. And the caveat being that we may have to come back and amend this if Leominster isn't ready for federal fiscal year 2024. We can amend it back and probably go with something like a scenario 2 in the future if that's the case. So this will be developed into a draft tip for review for next month's meeting, likely.
Okay. Good enough. I guess we're moving on now, Brad, to the discussion with regards to the Park Street North Central Pathway Connector.
Yes.
Underneath that.
This was presented last month to the MPO. We wanted to bring it back to the MJTC to get a look at it and to learn about the project, and it will start to make its way into our tip process at some point in the future. And I believe we have from Ty and Bond. I just lost your name.
I'm here,
Alex.
Brad. Alex
Yes,
Fagnan.
yes, from Ty and Bond to do the presentation on this. And Brian has the one of the handouts from the MPO meeting to show. And with that, I don't know, Alex, do you have anything else besides that one handout from last time, that one slide?
So there was a 5-slide presentation. I can either talk to the handout or I could pull the slides up, either way.
Well, we don't have.
I can make you a presenter, Alex.
Okay, we could do it that way. Try not to mess the whole conference up here. Let's see.
Now we do that our own selves.
All right, share my screen. It's going to share everybody's face back at them for a second. Let's see. Can folks see the?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I can work from here then. I can't see anyone's face, so just yell at me if you need me to pause for a second. But this should only be a minute or two. So, thank you for the introduction, Brad. Alex Fagnan, project manager with Ty and Bond, here on behalf of the City of Gardner, Department of Community Development and Planning. Lindsay Butler, who's the assistant director, is on the call as well. But I'll run through these slides, and then if anybody's got any questions, happy to entertain those. So, talking about North Central Pathway, Park Street Connector. Just by way of background, folks are probably aware North Central Pathway is a rail trail that starts up in Winchendon behind the Y off Central Street, heads generally south, and currently the improved section ends at Route 140, which is Green Street in Gardner. So that's the green line at the top of the graphic on this slide. If you look to the bottom of the slide, there's another green line. That green line starts on the bottom side of Crystal Lake, heads south off the slide. That represents a series of multimodal accommodations, bike lanes, shared use path segments that run from Crystal Lake down to along Tiffany Boulevard down to Union Street. And those improvements get within a half mile of the Hubbardston town line. And then if you look back towards the middle of this graphic, you've got Crystal Lake, and there's a dark blue segment that kind of runs along Crystal Lake, runs around the south side. That represents 2 ongoing efforts by the City of Gardner, one called the Nature Trail Connector and one called the Downtown Improvements Phase 3. Those are shared use path projects or have shared use path components that are funded outside the TIP program. So the City of Gardner has found other funding sources. And those 2 projects, the Nature Trail comes off the North Central Pathway corridor, snakes around a National Grid substation, and connects to Crystal Lake Drive, which is where Crystal Lake Park and the cemetery are. The downtown improvements, those will start at Crystal Lake Drive and head south to Park Street. There's also an east-west component that connects over to Veterans Ice Arena, which is important because folks may know that there's a trail segment that leaves the parking lot of the ice rink, heads up by Haywood Hospital and over to the community college. So 2 big user bases, that you talk about recreation with these shared use paths, but you're talking about potential functional users there that can access from the center of Gardner up into those two big centers. The red segment on this slide is the missing link, if you will, and I'll talk about it more in a second. But the other comment I just wanted to make before I flip to the next slide is, the North Central Pathway was always envisioned as a connection between downtown Winchendon and downtown Gardner. So, the red on this slide really represents that gap in the current network. So this is just zoomed in on that same graphic, looking at the specific section we're talking about. It's about 1.6 miles. It would be a paved 10-foot wide shared use path, kind of the typical, MassDOT rail trail section. The very north end of the potential project is on the south side of Route 140. So there's folks may be aware there's a current overpass project under design up there. It was probably on the slides that Brian was just presenting prior to this. That overpass project will get bikes and pedestrians safely over Route 140. Route 140 is pretty high speed, not a good spot for people to be crossing the street. So that's a current tip project. And then this project would pick up at the southern side of Route 140 and proceed south to what's approximately 297 Park Street. That's where the National Grid substation is. And that would be the southern limit of this project, where it would flip over to Nature Trail and then the downtown improvement sections. I just wanted to note too on this slide, this is a former rail bed. There's current pedestrian activity along this corridor. Every time I've been out there, there's always somebody out for a walk. So not only is it, the desired line there, but people locally are used to the use. So you're not dealing with that rail trail issue or concern sometimes where people feel like, you're putting a path through their backyard. This is pretty actively used. We're looking to improve it and bring it up to that paved standard with all the accessibility considerations. I just wanted to talk quick about coordination to date. So we did meet with MassDOT District 3 staff back in 2021. At that time, we were proposing a bigger project that included those two blue sections that you saw on the previous slide. District 3 was supportive of this project. It's a good tip project, but they wanted to see a couple things. They wanted to see the city, try to find some other bits of this project to move forward, which is Nature Trail and the downtown improvements. And they also wanted to see that overpass project making some progress to staying on track with its funding year. That project has made progress. That's a separate design team working for DPW, but they're rebuilding some momentum. I think they just lost some steam during the COVID years, but I think things are on track there. That we've met with them a couple times to discuss the tie-in point of the two projects. And basically at this point, MassDOT's District 3 is kind of given their blessing to go ahead and get this entered into MAP it, which is something we're working on so that PRC can review this at their next meeting in a month and a half, and then it would come back to the MPO for consideration. And I just wanted to point out too that we've coordinated quite a bit with National Grid. National Grid's actually the property owner. You can see the transmission line in the photo on this slide. That transmission line runs adjacent to the historic rail bed. And so, they need to be on board, and they are. We've walked the site with them. We've had some virtual meetings recurring with them. Actually, the Nature Trail path that kind of snakes around their substation came off some of that coordination with them. They had some concerns, so that addresses some of their concerns. And then I guess I'd just say that they're willing to enter into a license agreement with the city for this project, and particularly if MassDOT's involved, because they feel that MassDOT has a good understanding of their, what they need for their operations. And I just say too, since 2021, since we talked to the district, we do have survey completed. We have done wetlands delineation. So now we're working on the map at entry, and then we take the concept designs that we've had and advance them to a pre-25% for that next MassDOT step. So, things are progressing along, and this project's kind of ready to get into the queue. So exciting time for this project. But the intent was really just to familiarize the folks on the call with what's going on here, with the desire to infill that gap, and then happy to answer any questions here from folks on the call. I'm going to take my share screen down so I can see everybody.
I just have one thing to throw in there. We just received a voicemail yesterday regarding a MassDOT public hearing for the North Central Pathway pedestrian bridge project, which they're looking to have on April 25th at 6:30. We don't have all the particulars in terms of location or something like that. So we're waiting for that notice to actually come into us. When we get it, we'll be posting it on our website, and we'll also distribute it at upcoming meetings and to people on our mailing list. So that project is coming up for a design public hearing. So we'll make sure everybody's aware of when that occurs.
Are there any more questions? Seeing and hearing none, thank you very much for that. We'll move forward to the next item, which is...
Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks again. the regional transportation plan update.
I have some information first on the preliminary survey result. I don't have a whole lot of the results. It was taking a little bit longer than I anticipated to go through the numbers, but so far we've had 259 surveys in the system. I think we got maybe 30 or 40 more left to input. We're waiting on some being mailed to us. Once those are in, we'll officially shut down the survey. We've taken down the links for people to access it from our website and from the RTP website too. So it's just a few more paper surveys we have to input. But based upon what we have so far, as I said, there were 259 surveys that came in. 93% of them came from communities within our region, MRPC communities. So that left 17 or 6 to 7% that came from other communities, such as it was West Boylston, Gilbertville or Barry, and a couple other towns like that had information, put some information for us. You can see this is a breakdown of where the responses came from. Some of them that have no numbers listed, it has to do with we asked for their zip code, and sometimes the zip code overlapped into a couple of communities, so they've been included in different spots. But you can see we got our biggest turnout from Townsend. We sent us 63 surveys were inputted there, and Gardner gave us 47. So, but I think I was surprised at the total number we received, 259 so far. And from that, our next step is to then look at more of the individual questions. And the most important one I'm going to be focusing on is the ranking question that asks people to rate from 1 to 10 the different types of programs and projects, such as road maintenance, safety, climate change, and those kind of things. That plays into our development of our planning scenarios. I don't know how many recall being around on the last RTP, but we developed 3 planning scenarios that helped us determine how to try and spend our target funds and what to concentrate those on. And we'll look at the surveys and results from this and our feedback from the community workshops we had to see if there's been a change in the feelings of the general public on what should be the most important thing to focus on the funding. As I mentioned last time in 2020, the recommendation was to look at more road maintenance as receiving the majority of the funding. That came out, when I say majority, about 40% of the target funds were estimated should go towards road maintenance type projects. And the other 2 funding scenarios, planning scenarios, depended on should the money concentrate on movement between communities or inter connections between communities from one community to the next, or intra staying within the communities, making it easier to move about in a certain particular community. So we'll be comparing the results from this survey with that information, and we'll present that to you hopefully at the next MJTC. And we'll probably look to schedule a public meeting to discuss these planning scenarios and the survey results in the near future. That's all I have on the surveys, if anybody has any questions. No? Well, then Brian has some information regarding the financial plan.
Yep, and let me just try to get it up on my screen here. This is just some preliminary information that we have as part of the RTP. We also do some financial analysis and really just like a financial exercise, which we look at our expected funding over the next 20 years, and we determine what we want to focus on depending on the needs. So, and the main takeaway here is it's a fiscally constrained document, just like the TIP. So we look at what we expect from federal funding, and we use an assumed estimate of future funding over 20 years, which we get from Mass DOT, and They basically they come up with those numbers using the current fiscal year and funding, and they project over 20 years. And as we've seen with the TIP target funds, there's been a significant increase as some of these federal bills have boosted funding. In this case, the bipartisan infrastructure legislation that has boosted much of the TIP funding as well. And so we'll be assuming a larger funding pot to consider in our financial exercise in the TIP. And there was not a handout, but just to give you an example of what the difference is in 2020 as compared to what we'll be working with in our 2024 update. In 2020, for target funds in our MPO in our region, we considered through 2040, the 20 years of that particular plan, we would be likely to receive $301 million for target funds. You can see the year by year breakdown here in the in 2020 RTP chapter on financials. In our newest update in 2024, it's hard to see, but in this same category, we'll assume $382 million, which is an increase of about 27%. So just like the TIP and some of the other things that we've seen in recent years, the funding has gone up. Obviously, also inflation has gone up, and it's not necessarily a capital investment program or anything where we really get into specifics about projects. But in any event, we'll be considering more funding to allocate in our region over the life of this plan. So that's just a preview, and much of this analysis comes after we finish the bulk of the document. We consider many of the needs that come forth from looking at the things in the document itself, as well as some of our surveys and things like that as well. So we're assuming more funding going forward in the next 20 years. So that's all I really have for the financial discussion. Are there any questions or?
I'm sorry, Dick, we can't hear you. No, it looks like it's some kind of audio problems. I'll just jump in for him right now. So if there are no questions, we'll go on to the contract status reports. For FTA and the RTA, I'll ask George Cahaley if he has anything he'd like to say at this point. George, anything on Mart? You're still muted.
Okay, I have a couple reports on our project at MART we are working on. First thing, the Fitchburg Intermodal Transportation Center, the rehab project of the roof replacement has been completed. And the other thing I have is the Board of Selectmen for the town of Townsend have voted to petition to join the Montachusett Regional Transit Authority MART, and their request has been received, and MART Advisory Board at their scheduled meeting tomorrow on March 9, 2023, will be voting to accept the town of Townsend as MART new member community. It's great news for us. The other thing I have is the MART bus shelter grant. As you know, MART has been awarded $180,000 for bus shelters through the Shared Streets and Space Program under Mass DOT for 2023. MART will be installing bus shelters in Fitchburg, Leominster, Gardner, and Atoll. Next several months between April and December of 2023. MART has installed recently a new bus shelter at Putnam Place, 166 Boulder Drive in Fitchburg, and that shelter was under 5307 funding program. All these projects will be soon starting installing them. This is what I have. If you have any question or Townsend like to add to their request to Mark.
Any questions for? I see one in the hand. Can't see that.
Veronica has a question.
I just have one question. George, thank you. I'm glad you'll be considering our request tomorrow. Could you tell me what time the advisory board meeting is? Are we able to attend that or?
Yeah, it's going to be virtually.
Okay.
I will ask the information to be sent to you. The meeting it is 10:30.
10:30. Okay, thank you very much.
Any more questions for George on the shelters or? Okay.
Yeah.
Item
Mass
C.
DOT.
Yep.
Sorry.
You're all right.
Okay, so the Mass DOT, my report quickly is the MPO will be meeting next week, as we stated, on March 15th at 1 p.m. Again, we'll just continue discussions on the TIP, the UPWP, and the RTP. In addition, the MPO is going to receive presentations on the statewide targets for the performance measure number 2, which is known as pavement bridge conditions, and performance measure number 3, system performance, congestion reduction, and emissions. The state's going to present the new statewide targets they're recommending, and the MPO will be asked to sign on and endorse those performance measures. So that'll be the main area of focus at next week's meeting. We do have a few handouts for you. First is from MassDOT on the Northern Tier Passenger Rail Study. It's the newsletter for February 28th. This newsletter discusses the study and the next step in the study process to develop 4 additional potential service plans, also known as alternatives, for passenger rail service along the North Adams, Greenfield, Boston corridor. They'll also be looking at various attractors and notable points of interest that could help drive ridership in the area. On our MRPC webpage, under announcements, there is a link to a recording of the January 11th public workshop, as well as for this newsletter. As I previously mentioned, the January 11th public workshop initial alternatives they proposed just talked about train stops in Greenfield and then into Fitchburg with nothing in between. We brought up the point that there needed to be something in Gardner and Athol need to be considered as train locations. My understanding is that'll be part of the development of the 4 additional alternatives. But if you're interested in the whole process and the potential passenger rail study, to take a look at the public workshop, and there'll be some links there too to get you to their website where they have additional information. We received from Massachusetts Department of Fish and Game, Division of Ecological Restoration, an announcement for a notice of grant opportunity under the Culvert Replacement Municipal Assistance Grant Program. They're seeking proposals from Mass local government units interested in replacing undersized, perched, and or degraded culverts and bridges located in areas of high ecological value. The purpose of this funding is to encourage eligible applicants to replace structures with better designed crossings that meet improved structural and environmental design standards and climate resiliency criteria. In general, individual awards have ranged from $25,000 to $400,000 for a single stream crossing replacement, depending on the project phases and the work proposed. Awards over $200,000 are anticipated for construction projects only. Interested communities should view the full announcement, including funding eligibility and evaluation criteria that can be found on the Combis website. The announcement with appropriate links is also on our website under announcements. So if you're interested, head to our page and take a look at the announcement. You have the links to the different for further information on what you need to do to apply. And it is also in that OneDrive folder for today's meeting. Excuse me. We just received recently, I think it was yesterday, a newsletter from the Federal Transit Administration. It's the Region 1 newsletter. Region 1 encompasses all of New England, Maine to Connecticut and Rhode Island. And it just lists the various projects and programs and the status on those things within the region that the FTA has helped fund and is looking to fund in the near future. So that's just more information, and that is also on our website for everybody to take a look. And last month, we had a Transportation Open Forum. I was sponsored by MassDOT, the Health Equity Partnership of North Central Mass, or CHNA, and the MRPC. A large group of interested individuals met to hear about the state's long-range transportation plan, as well as the Montachusett RTP. Several comments and issues were presented by those in attendance, and we expect to use many of those comments and incorporate them into the regional transportation plan. A recording of the forum can be found also through our MRPC webpage through the announcements section. So if you're interested in what happened at that forum, you can take a look and watch a recording of the events. And then finally, we received word from the US DOT regarding an application we had put in for a planning grant under the Reconnecting Communities pilot program. That planning grant was to look at a possible new interchange off of Route 2 at South Athol Road. However, it was not selected for funding. So we plan on meeting with the town in the near future to discuss other possible options for funding such a planning study if they still want to continue with the project, possibility of the project. So we'll be doing it in the future at their convenience. So unfortunately, there were only 2 projects in Massachusetts selected for that program. One out in Pittsfield, I believe, and the other one in Boston. Surprise, surprise. So, and that is all I have on MassDOT for you. Any questions?
Okay, hearing none, I guess we'll move forward to item number 8, which is next month's JTC, which if my calendar is right, that's Wednesday the 12th.
Yes, April 12th at 2:30.
2:30. Are there any other questions or concerns, comments that people would like to bring forward before we call the meeting to close? If not, thank you all very much, and see you next time.
Thank you.